Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan, aka Stout, and welcome to Stout Gaming. This week we've got our Week 3 matchup in the MaxDouble League Pokemon VGC Draft League against Noah, and without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the action. So looking at Game 1, the first thing I want to address is the Dusknoir Guzzlord combo that I have on my team. Do I think it's good this week? No, not really. If I wasn't 2-0, I wouldn't have brought it. I just wanted my future opponents to know that it was a potential option on my team and have to team build around it. The rest of my team this week I do think is pretty good, and they are what I'm going for in this first game. I think Thievul Tapu Koko is a very solid setup against basically anything my opponent can throw out. And I know Landorus is going to be very important against the Tyranitar. They do not bring their Sylveon though, which is nice for potential Guzzlord shenanigans if I decide to go that way. But I do know that Landorus is going to be my most impactful Pokemon this game, and the Thievul setup is actually designed to help support the Landorus as well as the Koko. I gave it Howl so I could continually boost the Landorus. And my initial plan, depending on what they lead, is to Volt Switch out with the Tapu Koko into Landorus, max the Landorus, and then start howling to boost it up, give it Max Knuckle to take out the Tyranitar, or Max Airstream on anything else. The game, of course, doesn't necessarily unfold that way, but that's my plan going into the game. On my opponent's side, the lack of Salamence and the lack of Sylveon are fairly comforting. Weakness Policy Salamence was something that I was really fearing, and I built a lot of my team around that as an option, and then Sylveon I think goes in decently against large parts of my team as well, so I think I dodged a couple bullets in their team building process. So they lead with Zapdos Morgrem. I know in the past that, looking at past sets they've had, this Morgrem likely carries both screens Fake Out, and I imagine Trick, because that's something that they've run before, so I think it's going to be Trick Eject Button. So I'm a little nervous about Dynamaxing turn 1. But I also know that this Zapdos, even if it's as bulky as possible and Dynamaxes, is really going to be in for a bad day if I Fake Tears it and then hit it with an Electric type attack. The only question is, do I want to Volt Switch out into the Zapdos to get up the Landorus as was my initial plan, or do I want to go for a Thunderbolt or Max Lightning, which was something I calced as more likely to kill the Zapdos. I don't want him to start Max Airstreaming with the Zapdos and then beat me to the speed game, so even though I'm fairly certain he's going to have Gastrodon in the back to switch in, I do just want to make sure that this Zapdos has a bad day. And he does switch in the Gastrodon, which is going to be a little bit annoying. He's going to basically get up a free light screen, except I do get Fake Tears in on the Gastrodon, which is going to make it pretty susceptible next turn to my newly modified plan. I think he probably still has Tyranitar in the back, but at this point, Gastrodon might carry an Ice move, and I don't need Landorus as much in this position as I would have had something that wasn't Gastrodon come in. So I decide that I want to go for the Fake Tears again into the Gastrodon. The Morgrem's not really going to be doing much to me to threaten me this turn. And then even with a Rindo Berry, if it's at -4, Max Overgrowth should KO a non-Max Gastrodon, and if it doesn't have Rindo Berry, it should KO any Gastrodon. Even if it Dynamaxes with no Rindo Berry, I think it KOs off the top of my head. The Max Overgrowth tech on the Koko was specifically for this Gastrodon. So, looking at how this turn is going to play out, I see that the Morgrem does in fact have Trick, and I confirm that it has an Eject button, which is going to be important moving forward in future games for my setup plans. I'll take the Gastrodon down to -4 special defense, launch a Max Overgrowth. I see it has a Rindo Berry, but it didn't Dynamax. Even though it is sitting behind a light screen, it's 4 times super effective at -4 special defense, and I do pick up the KO, so it's a very useful start to the game. He no longer has an electric immunity to switch in, and I know at least 2 of his 3 Pokemon are also going to be weak to Fairy, so Max Fairy is going to start putting in work pretty shortly. Even if he has Tyranitar in the back, which is the biggest fear for me, which it does turn out he does have. So I know that the Sand will give the Tyranitar a special defense boost, and it is also sitting behind a light screen, but I imagine that I'm still going to be able to chunk it at -2 with a Max Fairy move coming from Tapu Koko, and he doesn't have a switch in because Zapdos in the back is also hit super effective. If I can get rid of this Tyranitar, Landorus should be able to clean up the Zapdos. I don't think he'll have any tech specifically to take out the Landorus from Zapdos. So here comes the Max T-Tar, pretty much as expected. The Morgrem at this point, I'm pretty sure his set is Fake Out, Dual Screens, and Trick, so it can't really do much of anything at this point in time. So let's just see how this turn plays out. Here comes up the Reflect, which is annoying for the Landorus in the back a bit, but not huge. Take the T-Tar down to -2, and I expect this to do a very, very solid chunk. I didn't run this calc specifically, but that does less than expected, so generally I expect this to be a fairly bulky Tyranitar, which means that this is about to hurt, especially with weakness policy. He has the chance to just take out the Koko, which is what I would do in his situation, but instead he Max Knuckles into the Thievul. I'm not sure if I agree with that play as much. The Koko is a bigger threat. The Thievul is annoying and has a lot of things that I can do with it, but it also gives me a free switch into things that I might have in the back, including things that can just threaten the Tyranitar. Nihilego and Landorus are both considerations here. I have a Scarf Nihilego that is 1 point faster than max speed base 100 Pokemon, which means it should outspeed everything on his team since Weavile isn't here, even at +1 or with a Scarf. And Dazzling Gleam plus Max Fairy I think would take out the Tyranitar. But Landorus' superpower I also know takes out the Tyranitar, so there are 2 options here. And I think either one could be argued to be the correct play, but getting an Intimidate on this Tyranitar is probably slightly more useful than anything Nihilego gives me right now. So we've got 1 more turn of Max with my Tapu Koko, and he's got 2 turns of Max with the Tyranitar. Superpower into the Tyranitar is probably just a very safe play to go for. I imagine it picks up the KO because it's very specially bulky, but I sort of want to put a confirmation hit on it because I don't actually think this Morgrem is doing anything at this point in time. A bit about the Landorus set. I am running an Assault Vest set as opposed to Swords Dance set that I've run in the past, or Choice items which I've also run in the past. Zapdos is a pretty clean switch in there. Max Guard makes sense. Doesn't want to just eat it. Max Starfall into Tyranitar. Less than ideal superpower, less than ideal outcome, but Tapu Koko is still the fastest thing on the field, and a Dazzling Gleam is a pretty safe click since it's going to hit everything that's left on his team for super effective damage. That Tyranitar can't speed up, and superpower should just take it out. Now, the potential downsides of this play are if Zapdos has a move that can take out the Landorus from neutral, then I could be in some trouble, but I don't think Zapdos has that move, and even if it did, I guess Thunderbolt into Zapdos would have been the play, but I don't even know if that KOs outside of electric terrain without the special defense drops that the Thievul can provide. So there is a way to punish me for this current setup, but I think I've put myself in a favorable position. and protecting with the Zapdos I think is just the wrong move. I'm going to be able to get some chip onto this Tyranitar with a super effective Dazzling Gleam, take it to just under 50%, and Superpower will KO it. So at this point, I know he's got Morgrem in the back, and I've got to figure out the best way to deal with this Zapdos. He has Fake Out available on the Morgrem, which is what he will be doing in my estimation. And I know I also have Nihilego in the back, which should be able to one-shot this Zapdos with the setup that I have with it. So my thought is Fly into Zapdos is probably safe, switching into Nihilego is probably safe, and assuming Fake Out goes into Koko, that means we'll get a free switch in with the Koko later, which should just about lock this game up for me, so I'm just going to Dazzling Gleam, let the Koko get switched out because it has the eject button that the Morgrem gave it earlier. Put in Nihilego. Nihilego, if that Zapdos has a ground type move, is just going to die this turn, but that does just give me the free switch back into the Koko, which is what I need. And I see it has Stomping Tantrum, so I imagine it has Fighting, Flying, Ground, and then either Coaching or a Protect move. Nihilego will go down, which will give me a free switch into the Koko, which in turn is going to spell the end of the day for this Zapdos-Morgrem combo, because Koko in electric terrain with Dazzling Gleam and or Thunderbolt into that Zapdos is going to hurt. And if Zapdos protects this turn because of the fly out of the Landorus, then I probably want to go into the Morgrem. So there is a decision to be made between Thunderbolt and Dazzling Gleam, but I think either is a fairly safe win. And Dazzling Gleam will hit both Pokemon if he decides to protect, which he doesn't, which is a bit of a shock to me. I thought he was going to protect the Zapdos in the face of the fly. I get a crit, probably doesn't matter. Stomping Tantrum is going to do a decent chunk of damage and come close to taking it out, but the Koko has a little bit of bulk, which is useful, and I pick up the information of the Flying Berry, which will be good to know later. And this Morgrem doesn't have an attacking move, I don't believe, which will allow me to just cleanly pick up the KO on it and take the first game 2-0. So the Landorus, I think any of the moves are reasonable except Earthquake, obviously. Rock Slide isn't much of a giveaway. Fly also would give away no new information, so because I've already shown Fly, I'm just going to Fly again, so he doesn't know for sure that I have Rock Slide. He does a nice move here with a trick. He'll just pick up information on the Landorus, learn that it has the Assault Vest, but Dazzling Gleam here is going to do some damage even with the Light Screen, and Landorus will be able to pick up the KO next turn with Fly if Dazzling Gleam doesn't pick it up. So a good game to my opponent for this first one. I think I had the advantage in terms of who we brought out and in play, but my prep does leave a bit to be desired, I think, after game one, especially seeing how the Zapdos was able to take out the Nihilego pretty easily, and any play with the Landorus because of the Zapdos is a bit nerve-wracking. But we'll see what happens in game two. So in game two, I feel very comfortable with my position in the match, probably a little too comfortable, and I'm being honest, and it leads to a bit of sloppy play. But I decide that if he overcommits to stopping the sort of Tapu Koko, Thievul, Nihilego fast mode, that Dusknoir Guzzlord in the back has the potential to just put this match away, even though I don't actually think it's good in the face of Tyranitar. But I'm going to bring Tapu Koko and either Thievul or Landorus. I think I end up going with Thievul to put pressure on his team, try to get some clean switch-ins for Dusknoir and Guzzlord, hopefully scare out the Tyranitar, and see if I can put him work with this Trick Room mode that, I cannot emphasize this enough, I think is actively bad this week, but very fun. I'd already designed a meme around it that I wanted to send to the group, and like I said, I want my future opponents to have to consider it in their team building, much like they have to consider the rain mode on my team in their team building going forward. So, Rotom-H and Morgrem is the play here. In the past, my opponent has run both Nasty Plot and Will-O-Wisp as the fourth move on Rotom-H. I really hope it's Will-O-Wisp here, because if it's Nasty Plot, he has a chance to just steamroll this game pretty easily. I have a couple different options here. I don't really think a Volt Switch is in my best interest quite yet, but this Rotom-H does have the potential to be very annoying. I'm debating parting shotting into it, just snarling to try to get multiple special attack drops on it, which becomes a running theme at some point to snarl in the face of Rotom-H, especially Game 3, but we'll get there when we get there. So Fake Out into Thievul makes sense. Dazzle and Gleam, we'll see what we can do into the Morgrem and the Rotom. It does a decent chunk to Morgrem. I get to eject button it out, see what he has in the back, and if Gastrodon comes out, then I've got free Volt Switch, without the possibility of it getting eaten by a clean switch-in. But if something else comes out, we'll adjust play on the fly with the knowledge that I'm probably going to Dynamax Guzzlord in the back no matter what he does, which has the potential to be bad or good, but we'll see. So Tyranitar coming out tells me that he could max it, and he'd be able to shut down the Dusknoir with a very strong Max Darkness. At this point, I decide that my prep actually wasn't that good, because I shouldn't have Citrus Berry on the Dusknoir. I really should have had Dark Berry on it, and I'll take that into consideration moving forward. And Nasty Plotting up means this Rotom is going to start doing some serious damage, especially if he Dynamaxes it, and I don't really have a way to hit it because I didn't bring Landorus this game. I do not feel very comfortable in my position at all this game. I think my prep was a bit substandard for Nasty Plot Rotom, and on top of that, my play and positioning, I got a little greedy trying to get into a Trick Room mode, so I think I'm going to get rolled this game, but I'm going to do what I can to deal some damage to it. I do think that Tyranitar protects this turn and Rotom Dynamaxes, so I'd like to minimize its potential damage output while also dealing as much damage to it as I can, which, frankly speaking, isn't a lot, but it's something. And I don't know what his fourth Pokemon is yet either. But this game's going to go pretty poorly for me. I can feel it. I'm going to have to do my best to position Guzzlord for a potential comeback sweep under Trick Room, but it's going to be tricky given what he has set up so far. So, snarling into Rotom, always good, drop the special attack, super useful. And then Thunderbolt does about what can be expected. Max Flare will get rid of Sandstorm, so that's nice, but it also takes out Tapu Koko. So now I have to get Trick Room set up. There's no way around it. Trick Room is mandatory. Guzzlord is my only shot in this game. That's the only real damage dealer I have left. And Dusknoir in front of Tyranitar feels bad. But I do see that Rotom has a Citrus Berry, which is important information to know. I will promptly forget about it in the future, but it is important information to know. So I just decided to Trick Room in front of this Tyranitar's face. Is that smart? Probably not. I know he's run Lash Out on it in the past, and if it has Lash Out, a parting shot into Tyranitar would kill the Dusknoir, so instead I'm going to Parting Shot into the Rotom, try to get that free Guzzlord switch in, and hopefully get Trick Room up with Guzzlord, because that at least gives me a shot. Not a great shot, but a shot this game. Again, the 4 I brought line up very poorly against the 4 he brought, and the Guzzlord tech was not very good this game. So Max Flare into Guzzlord in the sun is going to do a decent chunk, but Guzzlord has a lot of bulk. Lash Out, I'm glad that I didn't go for that Parting Shot into T-Tar, because that would have killed the Dusknoir. So I do get Trick Room up this game, and the Citrus Berry, even though I think it was the incorrect berry to bring, does give Dusknoir a bit of help. I haven't really decided how I'm dealing with this Tyranitar yet. I basically know I need to start boosting up the Guzzlord. I guess Brick Break into T-Tar is an option. I don't think it's a good option, but it's an option. Will-O-Wisping into the slot is probably the way to go. Hopefully he has Zapdos in the back or another similar physical attacker, and Will-O-Wisp has the opportunity to deal a substantial reduction to his damage output, which would allow Guzzlord time to ramp up. I know Max Ooze doesn't KO anything. Max Darkness probably doesn't KO anything. Max Wormwind, if he switched into Zapdos, would KO something, but I want to put a little bit of chunk on this Rotom, with the plan being to Brick Break and activate Weakness Policy on the Guzzlord in following turns. And that's probably my best shot to win this game, but I do feel strongly disadvantaged at this point of time, but I got to bring Guzzlord, which is always fun, but definitely not the right play. Pretty poor prep on my part, actually. Will-O-Wisp goes into Gastrodon, which is substandard, obviously. Gastrodon, the burn doesn't really matter. I don't know what it carries. It might have an ice move, and Ooze is not going to be doing a lot into Rotom. So I do get the special attack boost, which gives me the opportunity to do something, but you know, the berry that I promptly forgot about and will forget about again in the future. The Flare into Dusknoir is enough to take it out in the sun. And now I have to rely on Thievul under Trick Room and Guzzlord to pick up 3 KOs when I have 2 turns of max left. The numbers are definitely not my favorite at this point in time, but he does finish up his max on Rotom, which, you know, has the possibility of being very good for me. I have Snarl as an option to weaken the damage that comes into Guzzlord, or I have the option of trying to deal additional damage via Fake Tears. I think Snarl would have been the better play here. I know what he has in the back now. It's the Tyranitar is the big thing that he has in the back, and Snarl probably would have been the right play, and just hope to pick up a KO on this Rotom. I imagine Rotom switches though here, which it does, so my play on this game has also been very poor, which is going to cause a Max Wormwind to go into this Morgrem that I knew he had in the back and could switch Rotom into, and I'm not feeling great about my position. I'm not going to win this game in all likelihood, but I'm going to try to pick up as much information as I can. Thievul, when it isn't going first, is really bad, but when it is going first, it's the best Gloomon on my team, probably. I want to cut into the differential some, so I know a Poison here is going to kill the Morgrem, take me to +2, and then Beast Boost will take me to +3, and, you know, maybe I can make something work with that. Is it likely? No, but if I can pick up a KO on the T-Tar next turn, If he brings that out and I'm able to launch a +3 Draco into it, I'll go down to +1, then back up to +2, and, you know, I might be able to work around that. Yeah, was not expecting Yawn though. That's gonna shut me down pretty hard. I have electric terrain, and most of my Pokemon, except for the double Genie option, are grounded. So I didn't think Gastrodon would be packing Yawn, but it is just about the best thing he could go for right here, especially if he doesn't have an Ice move, which I'm kind of doubting at this point. I haven't seen it yet, which is a little shocking because Gastrodon with either, well, usually Icy Wind is going to be pretty good into most Landorus builds. But now I've got one turn left before I fall asleep. Thievul has very little potential damage output, and at this point I'm likely to just concede to my opponent. I want to let him get the kills that he needs for differential, because he's definitely earned them this game, so I will try to extract as much information as possible. A fake tears that will go after the Guzzlord's attack doesn't feel great, but we'll see what we're able to do with a Draco. If I'm able to pick up a KO with it, that would be nice, because then Rotom plus Gastrodon in the sand, Guzzlord might be able to get past, but if he protects this T-Tar, there's really no shot I have in this game. Which he makes the best play. I don't think Draco into the Gastrodon was a good play. I mean, it's a potential play, but it leaves the T-Tar awake with too much damage potential, and Gastro yawning into Thievul is going to put Thievul asleep as well, which is important moving forward because Thievul becomes the fastest thing on the field again next turn, even without Unburden, because my opponent didn't bring a lot of very fast options onto his team. Parting shot into the T-Tar is my idea to take down its damage output, potentially. If it's got a low enough damage output, Guzzlord might survive a turn or two of sleep and be able to attack back. But I'm not feeling good about any of these options at this point in time. Especially now that I see Tyranitar has superpower, I've lost this game, but that's good to know that it does have superpower. I think I knew that because of the Max Knuckle game 1, but good to confirm that it was superpower. I don't know if Tyranitar has any other physical attacks, but base 95 Max Knuckle is very different than base 90 Max Knuckle for Calcs. Muddy Water is an interesting confirm on the Gastrodon as well, but good games to my opponent for this second game. Really, the Trick Room mode should never have come out based on what he had. It probably shouldn't have even been brought to the match, but my opponent punished the play and was able to pick up a couple of clean KOs. I forget exactly what picks up the KO on this Thievul eventually. I don't think it's this Muddy Water. No, it's going to be the Sandstorm damage is what picks up the KO on the Thievul. Yeah. But good games to my opponent, and we'll see what happens in a decisive Game 3. So in Game 3, I'm going to go back to the fast mode. The question is, which two do I lead and which two do I bring in the back? Thievul Landorus is still a setup that I want to make happen, but I've not been successful in getting to yet. So I think having Tapu Koko set the electric terrain, potentially switch into the Thievul, which would allow the Landorus to start max airstreaming and potentially start boosting in the face of whatever he brings out. Pretty quick lock-in for me, and a very quick lock-in for my opponent as well, which makes me a little nervous. That Rotom-H didn't work last game, and it's going to cause Landorus to have to pull double duty as my best answer to Rotom and my best answer to Tyranitar. Theoretically, Nihilego is also a good answer to Rotom because it is scarfed with a rock move, but I don't feel great about getting Thievul into a good setup given what he has, even though it will be the fastest thing on the field if and when Nihilego does come out. I'm okay giving the Zapdos +1 with Landorus. Obviously, far from ideal, but I don't think that's a game-ending play at this point in time. I've got a couple options here. Dazzling Gleam is a solid option, Volt Switch is a solid option, Thunderbolt is a solid option, and Max Lightning is also a solid option. So with 3 options for the Koko, I think the best play would have been a Volt Switch into the Zapdos, try to get Thievul in, but I end up going for the Thunderbolt into the Zapdos, and then the Knuckle into the T-Tar. The T-Tar switch is pretty obvious right here, and I probably should have Airstreamed into the Zapdos even though it has the Flying Berry, because I don't want the Zapdos to get faster than the Tapu Koko, which I believe it will. And that will force me to double up into it next turn to prevent just easy KOs from coming out. So, not the best turn 1 play for me. I do get a boosted Landorus, which is nice, but he already has a boosted Zapdos, and it's going to be able to do a chunk of damage to whatever it wants to do a chunk of damage to, and if it Airstreams, it suddenly is the fastest thing on the field as well, and threatens both things on my team. Dynamaxing the Landorus was my best play this match in probably all 3 games. I finally get to do it in game 3, but the Thunderbolt was not the play there. Even a Volt Switch would have allowed the Thievul to come in, which would have still been faster than the Zapdos, and if I'm able to get the Thievul in while it's faster than the Zapdos, I'd be able to do some additional work with Howl. But Max Knuckle is going to boost the Landorus about as much as it's going to need to be boosted this game. Straight into the Gastrodon. And I'm a little nervous about how this game's going to go at this point, because I need to double up into the Zapdos next turn with Tapu Koko, whose Sash gets broken by the Sandstorm damage, and with Landorus. And he's going to be able to pick up 1 KO with the Zapdos, and I severely hope he chooses to kill the Koko, because if he kills the Landorus, I don't have anything to deal with that Tyranitar, except I guess for Koko, Nihilego, double Dazzling Gleam, and a Prayer. So I should lose this match. There's no way around it. If my opponent goes for Max Ground into the Koko, or I have a way out, but if he went for Max Flying again into the Landorus, there's no way that I should win this match. Fortunately, my opponent chooses a suboptimal route and takes out the Koko, which leaves the Landorus alive. Even through Berry at +1, Landorus should be taking out the Zapdos, and it's a competitive match again. I'm not saying I'm in the driver's seat yet, but I haven't been thoroughly eliminated. I think my opponent has been playing very well up to this point, but that's sort of where the crucial mistake was that he made in Game 3. Yawn means I need to switch this Landorus out, so we both are going to lose our Dynamax. I guess that's why he brought Yawn, because it still affects Landorus under terrain. I was sort of expecting Ice-type move there to kill the Landorus, but being able to bring it back in the future is less bad than other potential alternatives. So we'll see what he brings out. I'm going to have to do a quick double switch. Nihilego, I'm going to have Grass Knot on, which is going to be able to threaten the Gastrodon, and also the Tyranitar a bit. But I think the Gastrodon is a bit more of a threat to the Landorus, because if it's special water moves, and I guess it doesn't have an ice move at this point in time, which I think is a bit of a weird call given the week, but it hasn't used it yet, so it probably doesn't have it. So I need to switch out into Thievul to keep the Landorus awake, and with that switch out, it's going to put some pressure on my opponent when the Landorus comes back out, and that's going to be my biggest win con is keeping this Landorus alive and awake, so there's no option but to switch it out at this point in time. So Nihilego is going to be able to do a decent chunk of damage to something here. Seeing Tyranitar switch out into Rotom lets me know what my opponent has. No Morgrem is annoying. I think Morgrem was actually one of his weaker links given my current setup against my team. But I know Tyranitar's in the back and Gastrodon just protected. So I get a Grass Knot again into that position. I have to click Grass Knot because I'm choice locked into it, but the Grass Knot is going to do a lot to either of them. I know Gastrodon also has the Grass Berry, so it's probably going to survive, I would imagine, from this HP point with Grass Berry, seeing the amount of bulk that it's had in the past. Fake Tears does give me a chance to take it out. From 0, it definitely would survive. I'm not sure if this is the right play, or if I should have started to Snarl to reduce the damage output of the Rotom. But seeing that he switched out the Rotom, it turns into the right play, even if it wasn't necessarily the correct play in practice. So I know that he's going to take a bit of damage from that. It gets thoroughly reduced, and Fake Tears comes out after the Grass Knot, because even with Unburdened, because this is a Scarf Nihilego, it survives. Muddy Water is going to come out, do a decent chunk of damage to a lot of things, and even though that's the case and Nihilego loses accuracy, I feel decent about my position, but not great. I definitely need to kill the Gastrodon here, or else Landorus is going to have a hard time threatening both the Tyranitar and the Rotom. And since I'm choice locked into it, Grass Knot's my only real play at this point in time. But there is the potential issue of a miss now that I've had that accuracy drop, so I'm going to be doing my best to dodge that, not that I can really do much about it. And then the Thievul play here is really interesting. I end up going with Snarl just for a little bit of extra chip on the Tyranitar. I could also see Parting Shot being correct, or reducing the Tyranitar's special defense being correct, but Snarl was probably the right move there. I'm expecting this Nihilego to go down. I do hit with the Grass Knot, which is fortunate. Nihilego should go down, and that sets us up for a very interesting endgame where I think my opponent has a bit of an advantage. Lash Out is an interesting move into the Nihilego. I guess the Tyranitar probably doesn't have a ground type attack and didn't want to go for the fighting type attack, but that will still take out the Nihilego because Nihilego's defense is incredibly low. The Sandstorm goes away, which is fairly nice, although it might be a bit of a disadvantage for me because a little bit of extra special bulk may have helped me survive one attack from the Rotom on Landorus. But moving into this next play, I've got basically two options. Take out the Tyranitar with a superpower and lose Landorus to Rotom, or go for a Howl and a Rock Slide, taking out the Rotom, maybe flinching the Tyranitar, and if that happened, then I would win with a superpower into it next turn. But it comes down to, do I think Thievul can beat Rotom one-on-one after Rotom goes to -2 with Overheat? And the answer is, I'm not really sure. I've completely forgotten about the Citrus Berry again at this point, so very poor play on my part. And if my opponent calls a Protect correctly this turn, I'm also basically dead in the water. I think he is less likely to Protect on Tyranitar than he is on Rotom because of the upside that comes with the Rock Slide play, so I'm going to take out the Tyranitar. And I'm going to start Snarling to reduce the Rotom's special attack. The play of Snarl versus Fake Tears into this Rotom is very interesting. Thievul has a decent set of bulk, although it's not like max special defense or anything ridiculous like that. It is max HP, but no additional investment into special defense. Oh, we do see the Tyranitar goes down, and then this Rotom's Overheat will drop it to -3 and take out the Landorus. But Thievul also doesn't have any special attack investment. And I don't actually know if that crit mattered from -1 or not. I don't believe so, but it's possible. I'd have to run the calc on that, because I am holding the Assault Vest. So I want to keep snarling down this Rotom, and he's going to want to be nasty plotting it up. But Fake Tears will reduce the number of snarls I need, but it will also allow him to get to even or +1, which is what he would need to KO the Thievul in one shot a turn earlier. I don't know how many snarls it's going to take to kill him, and honestly, I think if he nasty plotted once and started launching Thunderbolts, he may have killed me first. That crit may reduce the number of snarls needed to kill him by 1. At this point, I'm thinking I'm going to need 3 more snarls to kill him, and he's nasty plotted back up to -2. If I let him nasty plot again to get to even by going for Fake Tears, then the snarl drops him to -1, and then he is 2 hits from killing me. So I think snarling is the correct move here, even though I've forgotten about the Citrus Berry. With the Citrus Berry, it's possible that Fake Tears is the right move to try to reduce the number of turns needed, because he's going to heal that damage right back up. And it becomes a really close endgame of when does he pull the trigger and start either overheating or thunderbolting. Thunderbolting is probably more correct if he's going to try and launch 2, or he could be nasty plotting up to where a single overheat does it. It's a very tricky endgame, and I just end up snarling because he has shown a tendency to nasty plot up. So I think he's more likely to continue to nasty plot if I continue to snarl, which will buy me time, and I think I've got a 3-hit KO from here, meaning if he can't kill me in the next 2 turns, I should be fine. That damage roll, I have no idea if I've got a 3-hit KO anymore, and if I don't, I believe my opponent will win, but basically the only move now is to snarl, fade critical hits, and hope that he attacks a turn too late, or I get the 3-hit KO. So I've got 2 turns worth of damage that I can put out onto him, it looks like, before he would get to enough special attack where Overheat would one-shot me. I think at this point, if he launched 2 Thunderbolts, he actually might have a chance. I, again, don't know the calcs off the top of my head for that. If he crit one of them, he would have definitely had a chance. So I don't know if the nasty plot there was the right play on his end, and now I'm basically hoping that the snarl wraps up the game. It looks like it might with a decent damage roll, but I think it is a roll at this point in time. I will end up picking up the KO and the match with Thievul snarling down, but kudos to my opponent here. I think he both out-prepped me and outplayed me, except for that 1 turn in Game 3, and I wish him all the best moving forward, and I will see you guys next week.